Hi, friends. Thank you for joining us on Food for Thought. My name is Sunil Chandy, and this is a ministry out of Christ Episcopal Church called Food for Thought, a ministry that helps to connect us online. And it started in the height of the pandemic over 19 months ago, and it's just been continuing. And I tell you, it's in this new year, as we are embracing this new year. I was thinking to myself how much I enjoyed this ministry. I never imagined that we'd be doing this type of thing 2 years ago, but we have been, and it's been really successful. And I find it gratifying and hopeful and joyful as I connect with many different people as they give us wisdom and understanding to help us deal with the challenges of our moment. And so I thank you for connecting with us. This is a pre-recorded session, but it is also a session that really requires for you to connect with us. If you are watching this, I hope that you will say hello. Tell us that you're here. Tell us that if this information is helpful to you, that you've found it helpful, and tell us where you are. It's an important thing to connect with others, especially as we go through the different challenges of our life. And so we're in January right now. This program is going to be airing in January, and so this year might hold many expectations for us. Every December, at the end of December, I know it's kind of trite and it's kind of cliche, but every December, the end of December, usually after Christmas services are done, I sit down with my wife and just look over this past year. And I look over this past year, see where the challenges were, how I did in some of the goals, personal goals that I might have, some of the things that I needed to improve on. I also review with her a little bit about, what we've been through in this past year. And then we also look forward into the future. And invariably, I think that, I remember this experience over and over, and even in my 54th year, I'm still remembering this idea that when I go through the midst of life, I sometimes feel anxious. I feel fearful. Sometimes I just have to trust, and I feel almost scared to trust in the things that I hope for and dream for, and things that I think God is revealing to us. And so, but invariably, even in those fearful moments, as I trust and I follow the plan that I have and then make momentary adjustments, at the end of the day, I find myself always at a better place. God always leads me or leaves me in a place where I'm feeling okay, I'll tell you, there are many years and in the midst of particular struggles where I've lost loved ones. I was wondering about about finances, how would I afford things, how afford educational costs for my kids. And Simi and I were all during all these periods of just wondering, and we were filled with anxiety. We always, at the end of the year, when we do this evaluation over the year, we are always surprised at those valleys where we were so anxious, and yet we kept faithful, and how God had led us through. And so I think it's an important exercise. So as and then of course, when we begin the new year, we sit down and we talk with our kids. Now they have goals, they have hopes and dreams and expectations. And I'm sure that this is something that all of us somehow do. As we face this new year. So, it's, when we go from December 31st to January 1st, there's always this moment of transition, and it's really in our mind, but in this moment of transition, we're open to thinking new ways, and also dreaming and hoping. And so today, we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions. We're going to talk about, some of the pitfalls of having of of the expectations we have and some of the benefits, some of the hopes and dreams we have, and how they can help us move us forward, and also how to deal with the negative feelings that we might get when we look back over the years, and maybe over the year, and we might see that it may not be as we expected, um, and how we deal with those feelings. And so, with that, we're going to be talking with a person that is a member of our parish, a wonderfully intelligent, wise, and delightful man. His name is Dr. John Healey. John is a member of our Christ Episcopal Church in Westerly Parish, and he's a great man. But I'll read you his bio. John earned his bachelor's degree in psychology from Fairfield University. He holds a master's degree and a doctorate in clinical psychology from Syracuse University, and received his initial training as a family counselor at Wichings Psychiatric Center in Syracuse, New York. He's also worked as an associate clinical psychologist at both the Oswego County Community Mental Health Center and the Mental Health Division of Oswego Hospital in New York. In addition, he served as a staff psychologist at the Community Child Guidance Clinic in Manchester, Connecticut. Dr. Healey has been in private practice for over 25 years. He feels that family systems perspectives, which he employs in his work with individuals, couples, and families, is summarized very well in a book entitled "The Family Crucible." And so we might even talk a little bit about that book as well. But John is amazing, and I found his friendship to be delightful and hopeful, and I know that you will too. So Ben, please bring John Healey on board. Hi, John.
How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Father.
How are you doing?
Doing okay. Trying to juggle things toward the as we approach Christmas.
Yeah, I know.
Done,
Yeah, I know. This is a season of busyness, isn't it?
This really is a season of busyness.
That's right.
It really is.
And although we, and in the midst of that, the busyness, we have to, God always orients our mind, I think, and from my personal perspective, orients our mind to think about what's really important as we deal with all the different to-do lists and things, figuring out what's really important. And those moments of quiet where we reflect are, for me personally, important too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this program is going to be airing post Christmas. It's our a program that's going to talk about New Year's resolutions, expectations for the new year, and also how we deal with the feelings as we look over those expectations from the last year, and then we look forward into the future. And and it's always important to have dreams for the future, but to also, there are a lot of people also not only imagine dreams and hopeful futures, they also imagine fears. They have fears that of what might happen, and they have anxieties around the world and what's going to happen, and if God's going to be there, and what's going to happen with COVID-19, what's going to happen with our lives, and as it's constantly in flux. So how do you handle New Year's resolutions, John?
Well, okay. I think I want to make a distinction between a New Year's resolution that deals with, for example, losing weight, and then maybe some of the more profound questions that we face in life. And in some ways, believe it or not, I'm against New Year's resolutions because I think we should be making resolutions all year long. I think that we're here. Why are we here living this lifetime? I think we're here to constantly work on our emotional and spiritual growth, and to do it every day, with every experience that we have. I like to look at every experience that I have as an opportunity to work on my emotional and spiritual development. And so, when you're talking about New Year's resolutions, I'm thinking we should be doing this all year long, and I think that's why you look at some of the research. A lot of New Year's resolutions fail because it's almost like when you look forward to making New Year's resolutions, you're sort of postponing a decision to make some changes in your life.
Mm.
And I'm thinking I want to take the Nike approach. I want to just do it now, do it now. Whether it be something as simple as changing your diet. You say, well, I'm really going to enjoy the Christmas season here, and I'm going to have a lot of Christmas cookies. In fact, I'm going to eat a whole platter full of Christmas cookies, right? And then after January 1st, and then I'll change my behavior.
Yeah.
But why not do it now? Why not have 2 cookies?
Yeah.
And because you're gonna have to, if you're gonna have to practice that. If you're gonna do it after January 1st, then you're gonna have to practice that ability to moderate your behavior. So why not start it now?
Yeah.
Because I think it really is an excuse to wait until, perhaps postpone it indefinitely. Well, I'll do it after, or I'll do it after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because the Super Bowl is like in February. So, well, okay, I'll wait till January 1st, then I'll wait till the Super Bowl, and then I'm going to wait till after St. Patrick's Day. We can always find excuses,
Yeah.
But that's focusing on smaller things like changing one's diet and exercising. But in terms of the profound questions that you're raising, I think that's why we're here. I think we're here to experience a lot of joy in this lifetime, to experience a lot of joy, but to experience challenges.
Yeah.
To experience challenge. Buddha said there's suffering in life. That's the first noble truth of Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
There is suffering in life. And maybe suffering serves a purpose. Maybe it serves a purpose. Maybe it brings us closer to God. And, if you want to look at the crucifixion itself, Christ went through the crucifixion, and the resurrection followed the crucifixion.
Yeah.
So there seems to be maybe a purpose for suffering in life, and I think we need to look at it that way, How can we grow from our experiences? Even though many of them are very, very, very difficult. I work with families. I'm working with this one family. 5 years ago, their 16-year-old son had a skateboarding accident and died. And they've been dealing with that since, and I told them, I said, you're going to be dealing with this for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Now, in my work, I typically do introduce a spiritual component into the work that I do, but only if they're open to it.
Yeah.
I don't force it on anybody. I'll ask them where they're at, with respect to their religious beliefs or their spiritual perspective. So in this particular family, I asked the father, I said, so where are you at with respect to your religious perspective? And he said, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. So I know I can't push that. So I understand. I asked the mother, she said, I don't want to talk about it. It's too raw. Even after 5 years, it's too raw to talk about it. So as I said, I do introduce this component into the work that I do, but only when people are ready.
Right.
I try to plant the seed, and sometimes down the road, it might be 5 or 10 years. It might be 20 years down the road. These are younger people, But I try, if I can't start talking about it right now in the session, I'll try to plant the seed.
Yeah. No, I think you're right about this importance of trying to figure out about these resolutions. I know, typically in America and all over the world, right? When you approach the new year, people get kind of in this frame of thinking, but it's like I have a personal trainer, and one of the things he says is that January and February, the gyms are filled. And then, people just want to go in there. They say, oh, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get in shape and all this. And it's all, and they're trying to get through like the holidays, and they want to enjoy it. And they think that, they have to, that starting January 1st, they're going to turn a new leaf in life. But invariably, by the end of February, this personal trainer of ours says they're not in the gym at all. And so,
Right.
So I think it's a good mindset. What you're saying is, I think, that I'm hearing is this thing that I've talked to, uh, many different people about this thing. It's this idea about, you know, our destination, and then and journey versus destination in my mind. It's kind of like, how do you embrace this journey? It's not just about getting to the end point. It's about enjoying the process of
Mhm.
getting there,
Mhm.
And so it's for, say, like the diet thing, the exercise thing. One of the things is we're always looking at that scale and saying, "Oh my God, we've got to be at this weight." But and I've got to go to the gym, and I've got to cut down on my food, and I've got to, do this, and I've got to do this, and it's kind of like this overwhelming, obligation that almost seems external. And but I think for me, what's working best for me is that knowing that the things that I want to do, like the exercise, even though it's hard, it's also gratifying. It makes my muscles move, and I can feel things.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, uh, eating right nowadays is
Mhm.
learning how to relish the things that are
Yeah.
healthy for me, like
Yeah.
the
Being more mindful of what you're doing.
right. So it's kind of like this idea
In the moment. Yeah.
in the moment, yeah. And I
Mhm.
think that's helpful to me, and I think maybe that's what I think you're saying that. I mean, you could start that anytime. It doesn't have to be on January 1st. It could be right,
It should
and the
be right
more
now. It
it
should be
should be
right
right
now.
now.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And
And
for
then
a lifetime. And for a lifetime. You know?
yeah, because at the end of the day, you want to love, you want to just love what you're doing,
Yeah.
instead of just thinking of it as an obligation, you know.
Or I'm giving something up. I'm giving something. You know what I mean? Rather than
Yeah.
focus on the positive aspects of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
And I also understand this wonderful perspective that you have about uh, this spirit. Where are we in terms of meeting the challenges of life? And like, I know that a lot of us um, don't like the challenges. It because it really causes us to work and challenge. As we adapt to new different ways, it can be challenging, and it can offer suffering, right? Because we're almost like changing the way we're doing things. But on the flip side, I mean, like this program here, right? I mean, this program that we have here is a response to the challenge of not connecting to my parishioners. I couldn't when 19 months ago, when we couldn't do services like we normally could, or we did, where I couldn't go to people's homes. We were scared about COVID and passing it on or getting it, and so how do I connect with people? Well, so in the midst of that challenge, we said, okay, this is a new discipline that we have to engage in,
Hmm.
and it's causing suffering. Part of it was an investment of time and money and resources of the parish, and then a part of it is, and helping people to learn how to do this technology. I mean, John, we at the very beginning of our program, Ben, our producer, was sitting with you and working on how to unmute and do the
Hmm.
sound and all this stuff, and it was challenging. It's
Hmm.
suffering, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there's something new that we learned,
Hmm.
and for me, I love the fact that this experience was a growing experience for our congregation. For me personally, I mean, I never imagined doing this type of stuff, but
Hmm.
I find it gratifying because I'm learning something new.
And
And
perhaps reaching more people too. You know. I
yeah,
mean.
and
And I think this is a big part of the future, actually. In addition to in-person meetings, I think it's a big part of the future. You know.
yeah. So
And my mother used to say, sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I think like I think the what you brought up in the second point, that this whole idea about people, not embracing challenge, uh, and I think you're just so insightful that these challenges can be growing moments for us.
Hmm.
You know. Growing.
I believe every challenge can be a growing. It's difficult, of course. It's difficult, and you have to empathize with people. I have to empathize with that family.
Yeah.
And I can't rush into a spiritual perspective with them.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting though, because I think when I know it's so difficult when you're dealing with loss.
Yeah.
especially loss of a young person. I've been in that situation over and over again, and so typically what I do is I work on the spiritual side of the loss, right? Helping them to see that in the midst of that loss, they're not alone. That God has not abandoned them. But then there's the psychological and emotional side, which I then refer to people like you, these family members, to people like you, to help them work out this idea of grieving in a way that's positive and hopeful for them.
Right.
But I always, what happens typically when a person, in my experience, has experienced a loss, that could be either a loss of life or even loss of, loss of a loved one, or loss of a job, or loss of a way of doing things. There's a grieving process that they engage in, and they then, their understanding of God changes a bit. They're in my mind, they always see God as as a being that controls all the elements and all of the factors of their life, and controls them, and then you do this for God, and then God gives you this.
Right.
And what happens is, when we go through a tragic moment, all of a sudden that's shaken, because you could be a wonderful person, a saintly person who does everything right and who tries to treat everyone well, and then all of a sudden life happens, and you've experienced this traumatic thing, and now your worldview is shaken. This idea of even God, where is it? God was supposed to protect me.
Mm-hmm.
God was supposed to take care of me. But then part of my conversation with them is that if God is the God that gives us freedom and hope, God is the one who helps us to work through the suffering, so that we could find ourselves in a better place, a stronger place. My personal view is that God is not a micromanager. God, in my life, what I've found is that God is always the one who inspires me to make choices, hopeful choices that help me to find hope, and help me to pass on that hope to the people around me.
Right. And to have faith.
Yeah.
Faith.
And so it's a spiritual walk a little bit. It's because it means that, I remember the first time I experienced loss, the loss of someone who was, my father, right? It rearranged my whole thinking about how God comes to me. And so it was and out of that grew this sense of feeling a sense of peace in helping deal with the challenge of that particular challenge, and then other challenges in the future.
A deeper sense of spirituality, isn't it? Sometimes when you lose people, or experience situations like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, with this family, and so I think they're connecting with people like you, because people like you are important to help them sift out how to live.
Yeah.
Especially in this transitional moment where their worldviews are being changed.
Right. So as I said, if they're not open to a full discussion of this perspective, I try to plant the seeds.
Yeah.
For the future,
I think, John, you're planting seeds just by being who you are. Just listening to them with patience, and helping them to know that they have someone that they could talk to, open up their lives to, and even share their doubts.
Empathy and compassion.
Yeah, I mean, and those are the things that Jesus modeled.
Mhm.
Every day in his ministry to the world. I mean,
Mhm.
with his disciples, with people who were considered to be his enemies. I mean, Jesus suffered, but he also acknowledged the suffering of others, and he understood in the midst of that suffering, I think, that God was present, not to take away the suffering, but to
Mhm.
help us to to understand suffering in its perspective
Mhm.
in life, and to still find joy in the midst of it.
Mhm. Mhm. And he was kind enough to show us that we have the right to doubt.
Yeah,
Father, why have you forsaken me?
yeah,
You know?
yeah. And then that Jesus is the one who says that on the cross, right?
Yes. Yes.
Father, my God, why have you forsaken me? As
Yeah.
he enters into this suffering
Yeah.
moment, but then he also turns around to those people who are um, who are persecuting him. He says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they're doing.
Mhm.
There's the suffering for me, especially as we face challenges. There is the thing is you face the challenge immediately right before you, but then there's also a global perspective of the suffering. How is it that
Yeah.
God can actually, how can this suffering be used to help
Mhm.
the world? And I think Jesus modeled that for us.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Ultimately, he surrendered. He said, "Into your hands I commend my spirit."
that's right.
So
Yeah,
it's great role modeling
yeah, that's right. That's right.
for
Well,
all of us. For all of us.
Well, I think this is, although we wanted to start talking a little bit about New Year's resolutions, we ended up talking about suffering, and maybe that's okay because, um, we're in this moment in time where a lot of people are suffering, and so maybe the new year is about
Yeah.
making choices not to see how that suffering can actually help us. I mean, not that we long for suffering, but
Yeah.
how we could learn things and grow from the suffering we engage with in this
Yeah.
new year.
Yeah. I heard one priest once. He said, "Suffering could be seen as being grace, a gift from God,
Yeah,
because it nudges us in the direction of greater spiritual development."
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
tough though, tough. We have to acknowledge that it is difficult.
Oh my,
It's difficult.
especially people who are facing the loss of children and family members,
Oh
of
my God, yeah,
adults, and
yeah, yeah.
and people who are anxious about the future,
Mm.
worried about how what will happen to them and their families. The biggest thing I think it's important for as a priest for me is to not to diminish the the feelings of suffering, not to say to somebody, oh, it's okay.
No, acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it, yeah,
Openly acknowledge it. Yeah,
and say and
yeah.
just I loved in the Gospel of John, Martha and Mary just lost their brother Lazarus, right? And you've heard this on funerals, right? But
Yes.
there is this one moment that isn't really listed among the funeral readings or for the day, but in that Gospel of John where Jesus is just lost Lazarus as a friend. There's a moment that says there's a line that's only two verse that's only two words long in some Bible versions, and it says simply Jesus wept.
Hmm.
Jesus wept. So what Jesus does is he doesn't say, okay, everything's going to be fine necessarily. He just says, in the moment, he was with Martha and Mary, feeling their pain, understanding their suffering. This is, and it just reminds me of how great God is and the
Hmm.
grace that God does. God gives us the choice to move, the choice to see different pathways. Doesn't make those choices for us, but walks along with us as we make our choices.
Hmm. He's our biggest fan, I think.
Yeah, yeah, amen.
So,
Well, John, I so appreciate and thank and I'm grateful to God that a person like you exists, Of course, right? And that you're a friend of mine and a friend of Christ Church and a member of Christ Church. And as you do your good work out in the world, um, just know that you spread the light of God just
Thank
by
you so
being.
much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Sunil. Yeah. And, and with respect to the New Year's resolutions, as I said before, I think it makes sense to work on it right now rather than postpone it to
Yeah,
the new, because I think when you postpone it to the new year, you start postponing it indefinitely, because I think the research indicates that not a lot of those resolutions work. You look at the data, but
yeah,
if life is truly one day at a time, it's one day at a time. And I mean, I work with a lot of alcoholics too, and they talk about their recovery, you know, staying away from drinking and then working on the underlying issues which feed into the addiction. And I remember this is when I was working up in Oswego. I was working with this one fellow, and he came in for a while. Then he dropped out of therapy, and he came back a year later, and he said, "Yeah, I've been to rehab." He said, "I'm in recovery now." And I naively looked at him and I said, "So you're never going to drink again?" And he looked at me. He said, "No, no, no, no. I'm not going to drink today. I'm not going to drink today. It's one day at a time." And I think that applies not only to uh, changing unwanted behaviors, but if you want to put in or adopt positive behavioral patterns in your life, one day at a time. Today, I'm really going to eat in a healthy way. Today,
yeah,
it's impossible to say I'm never going to have pizza again, but you could say I'm not going to have pizza today.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I think this one day at a time perspective applies not only to eliminating negative patterns, but also adopting positive patterns in your life. And
amen.
as I said, I think why wait till New Year's? Why not do it right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I agree with you. Thank you. And the only thing that I think you're embedded in that is that each action should be reflected upon, and we're not always reacting. And when we evaluate, we look back at the choices we made, and then say, how to make better choices one day at a time.
One day at a time.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's why a lot of the 12-step programs are so helpful to people, not only AA, but Overeaters Anonymous, and other 12-step programs.
yeah,
And they're spiritually based,
yeah,
because
yeah,
they work with the underlying emotional issues and the spiritual issues.
yeah. Beautiful. Well, John, I think we're at the end of our program, and I just again thank you for your insight and your friendship, and as we approach this new year, maybe exactly what you're saying, we should approach it one day at a time,
One day at a time.
one day at a time.
One day at a time. How can I work on myself and grow emotionally and spiritually one day at a time?
Amen. All right. Well,
So,
thank you. I got you. That's the bell going off.
that's my phone.
All right. Bye, John. Thank you, folks, for thank you, John, and thank you, folks, for watching. And this is our time for ending the program, of course. And so it's also our time to end with the prayer that we have. It's a prayer adapted by one written by Bishop Thomas Brown of Maine. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Jesus Christ, who traveled to towns and villages, curing every disease and illness. At your command, the sick were made well. Come to our aid now in the midst of the global spread of the coronavirus. Heal those who are sick with the virus. May they regain their strength and health through quality medical care. Heal us from our fear, which prevents nations from working together and neighbors from helping one another. Be present with those in authority who are making hard decisions. Support the medical professionals, emergency responders, counselors, and caregivers. We ask this all in your name, Jesus. Amen. Join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not in temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Friends, go in peace to love and serve God. Spread the light of Christ to the world around you. Spread it one day at a time as you grow closer to God and as you grow closer to your hopes and dreams. Spread that light because the world needs it right now.
Thanks for watching. Did you know that you can join Christ Church from anywhere in the world? If you're feeling connected to what we're doing, email us today at communicate@christchurchwesterly.org.